What works, first of all, the expectation for the step parent as an adult in the family often is to step into discipline. But we now have study after study that tell us that parents need to retain the disciplinary role.
Welcome to the Couples Therapist Couch, the podcast for couples therapists, marriage counselors, and relationship coaches to explore the practice of couples therapy. And now, your host, Shane Birkel.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Couples Therapist Couch. This is the podcast that's all about the practice of couples therapy. I'm Shane Birkel. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm here to bring you the most up-to-date information on how to help people have a better relationship. So whether you're a therapist who's looking to learn more about working with couples or a person who just wants to have better relationships, I'm hoping that this information will be valuable for you. I try to bring on many of the leaders in the world of couples therapy for interviews. So if you're interested in this, definitely subscribe and like the episode. I'd be really, really grateful for that. And if you're interested in the Couples Therapist Inner Circle, there's more information about that in the show notes, and you can click the link to find out more. So thank you so much. Please click subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of the wonderful conversation with Dr. Patricia Papernow about step families. Thank you so much for coming back, Dr. Papernow. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here. It's really important to me to put this information in the hands of people who can use it.
Yeah, that's great. And it was so valuable for me. I know it'll be for everyone else as well. And we were right in the middle of talking about the 5 major challenges that you've laid out. And I think we were sort of getting to number 3 at the time where we ran out of time. And I appreciate that you were willing to come back and get back into the conversation today. So this will be great.
Well, let me go back and give everyone an overview in case you're joining now and don't feel like going back to the first one yet.
Right.
Basically, the basic ideas are, first of all, 42% of Americans have a close step family relationship, and it is a fundamentally different structure. The structure creates 5 major challenges, and knowing what works and what doesn't is really important, because if you use your first time family map, I often say something like you're driving around Los Angeles with a map of Indianapolis. You're going to give people a lot of wrong and sometimes destructive guidance. So the 5 challenges, just to remind everybody, are, first of all, that kids come into step families very differently than a first-time family. Often the adults are thrilled, but kids are struggling with loss and loyalty binds and the pace of change. The second challenge is that the structure creates insiders and outsiders in the step couple. The parent is attached to the kid. They have a history with the kid. And the step parent is an outsider to all of that and an outsider to the ex-spouse relationship. And outsiders feel invisible and left out, and insiders feel torn. And we have to help people. First, we have to normalize it, that it's not you, it's the structure. And then we have to help people connect. The third challenge is parenting. Parenting and step parenting are very different. And parents and step parents are often divided over discipline. The fourth challenge is we have to build a new culture, but it turns out we have at least two already existing cultures. And we have to build that new culture while integrating and respecting existing cultures. And the fifth challenge is there is an ex-spouse, married or unmarried, there is another parent outside the family who is a permanent part of every step family. So those are the third, fourth, and fifth are the ones we're going to hit today.
Yeah, that's great. So let's dive into number 3, the parenting section. And I can't remember, you were it was so helpful for me to listen to you last time, and I learned so much. And I can't remember, we were talking a little bit about the authoritarian versus authoritative, but let's take it from the top as far as the number 3 parenting section.
Okay, because neither of us can remember exactly what we were talking about.
Right.
So here, let's take it from the top. That we know we have lots and lots of research that authoritative parenting by parents gets the best outcomes for kids on every measure imaginable. Authoritative parenting leads with warmth and responsive empathy and sets calm, firm limits and follows through on them. Authoritarian parenting leads with control and tends not to be warm, and it's a do it or else. And then there are two other parenting styles in the research. Permissive, gee, honey, whatever you want to do is fine with me. Lots of loving, not enough structure and limits. And disengaged parenting. What? I have kids. We often see disengaged parenting, by the way, after a spouse has died. Sometimes the remaining parent is so absorbed they're not present. So the dilemma is, first of all, parenting and step parenting are very different. And most people never get any exposure to how. And we are learning more and more about how important step parents are to kids. So I'm going to start with what works. What works, first of all, the expectation for the step parent as an adult in the family often is to step into discipline. But we now have study after study that tell us that parents need to retain the disciplinary role. Parents need to retain the limit setting role. And step parents need to focus on, I call it connection rather than correction, leading with warmth, being supportive, not control. The dilemma is that step parents all over the world want more limits and boundaries with their stepkids. And parents all over the world want more love and understanding for their kids. So step
Particularly from
parents,
the step parent.
that's right. Exactly. They want more love and understanding from their new partner. And kids' behavior is more irritating to step parents. And often what might even be authoritative parenting by a parent may read as permissive to a step parent. So, Joe's kid, Janie, leaves a mess in the kitchen. She's made herself cocoa. There's cocoa everywhere. And Joe's new partner walks in, I'll call her Mary, and sees the mess. And she's used to a clean kitchen. Now, in her mind, if Joe had raised his kids right, they'd clean up. In his mind, I was a single parent. I'm glad to have my kids make their own cocoa. If there's a little mess, what's the big deal? Now, that easily pulls the step parent into, you better get her to clean up or else. Inching towards that authoritarian. It easily then the parent wants to protect their kid. She's just being a kid. Easily tugs the parent into more permissive, whatever she does is fine with me, whatever my kid does. And that makes the step parent more desperate. And so the step parent gets more rigid. You better da-da-da or da-da-da. And parent gets even more permissive. And now I call it the polarization polka. And it's those of you who are emotionally focused therapy, EFT trained, this is a cycle you will see in the step couples. Really important that you have the content of this theme and that you understand that it is the structure that creates these positions. That will be helpful to people. And what kids need is authoritative parenting from their parents. They do need some limit setting. And they need warmth, not control from their step parents. So that makes this challenge particularly challenging. And add to it that most couples don't know that the parent's supposed to retain the discipline. Most couples don't know that. When step parents step into discipline, kids aren't ready. And worst is if step parents step into authoritarian discipline, but it's the place that step parents are most pulled towards. In fact, we have now several decades of research that when step parents parent in an authoritarian, you will do this or else, it is toxic for step parent stepchild relationships.
Mhm. Well, and I love that you brought in the idea of the EFT cycle, right? Because a parent who was never particularly permissive before, all of a sudden there's this step parent coming in who's being a little bit authoritarian or
Right.
something like that. And that I have a feeling the cycle would play out between the couple and they sort of become entrenched in the cycle. And there might be a lot of stuff to explore underneath the surface of why they're sort of seeking the things that they're seeking.
That's correct. And some of it is the structure. Some of it is parents, and I've taught all over the world. Step parents everywhere want more limits and boundaries. These aren't their kids. They don't have, if you're a step parent, you never held this kid as a baby. If you're a parent, you held this kid as a baby. You were in love with the kid, and the kid was in love with you. And you've been through all kinds of dirty diapers and, skin knees, and you have that loving connection. Step parents don't have that. And harking back to the first session, which those of you who haven't gone back to need to go back to, kids are often in a terrible loyalty bind. If I care about my step parent, I'm disloyal to my parent, especially if there's any conflict. And for kids, they've lost their parent when their parent recouples. So, in addition to all of that, in addition to the fact that the step parent doesn't have that old experience of holding this baby and having the baby be in love and you being loved, kids are often rejecting of step parents. So, how much worse for Joe's partner if the kid who leaves the mess in the kitchen barely says hello to the step parent? It's that much more irritating. Put kerosene on the fire, please.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and I think having this content is really helpful to couples as you track cycles like this.
Well, yeah, and I think I mentioned this last time, but I just love the way that you sort of normalize the experience for couples. And I feel like that's so important so that they don't feel like it's not like there's something wrong, particularly with them as people. These are things that so many people struggle with in these types of situations.
Yeah, and I think it's very normalizing, I think, is one of the most powerful things we can do. And I like to lead with empathy because anytime you're providing new information, you potentially are shaming people. And there is already a ton of shame here
Hmm.
that we're not succeeding, quote. So I often will say something like, this is really painful.
Hmm.
I'm betting you've had this conversation before. I don't usually laugh. I'm betting you've had this conversation before. It's really painful. And I just want you to know, and the more you go here, I have a four square chart where authoritative is in the upper left, authoritarian is the upper right, and permissive is the lower left. Disengaged is the lower right. And I can hold up that chart or pick it up off my laptop if I'm on Zoom and say, the more you go here, the more you go here. And then the more you go here and the more you go here. It's a cycle. We call it the
Hmm.
polarization polka. Uh, and I just want you to know this is happening not because you are failing, not because something is wrong with either of you. This is happening because you live in a step family. And step families push step parents up into this upper right corner. You don't know these kids. And lots of times they're not real thrilled to have you. You didn't, Joe's already told you that the cocoa was okay with him. You don't have that history. You didn't parent these kids as a single parent. And you never held her as a baby and felt her be in love with you. She's not in love with you. She's pretty rejecting of you.
Right.
And and you, Joe, you're the parent. You care about your kid. Um, and you're the stuck insider, and we talked about that in the first session, and you step parent are the stuck outsider, and this structure pushes you into these corners. So we can't change the structure. What we can do, and we probably won't change the difference, I can tell you, I'm in a step family for almost 30 years. My husband still thinks I'm a wimp with my daughter.
Mhm.
What we can do is change how you talk about it. Because here's the other piece of research: successful step couples and struggling step couples face the same challenges. Successful step couples have better interpersonal skills, and it takes a lot more skill to talk across a difference and get connected. We're learning this in the United States, and we're not doing it too well. Um, it's much harder. So, what I'm going to do is support you guys in how you talk about this so that you can each hear each other. And ultimately, here's what I find, guys. I find step parents can help parents firm up a little bit, and parents can help step parents warm up a little bit, understand where kids are coming from, and the difference will still be there. But you can collaborate. And here's the last piece: step parents do need a voice.
Mhm.
Step parents often have a lot to add to the conversation. And parents do need to listen and take in. And step parents have input. Parents have final say with their own kids.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I love how you framed it as for the step parent to focus on connection before correction.
Yes.
You know, because these situations play out in a lot of different ways. Sometimes the step parent comes in and wants to be super involved right away. Sometimes
Right.
the step parent comes in and the parent wants the step parent to be super involved right away.
Correct.
Sometimes neither one wants the step parent to be very involved. You know, there's all kinds of ways that this could play out. And I think, you know, when you have a situation where the step parent is trying to be super involved and trying to be super corrective, you know, it's really helpful to let them know that, you know, to bring to focus that the relationship with the family members is the number one priority, and the connection with the kids is the most important part of their responsibility. And helping the parent, probably, as you're talking, you know, helping the parent to be more proactive about
Yeah,
the
on the sidelines,
yeah, for sure.
behind closed doors. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a colleague who's also a stepmother. She says relationships before rules.
Uh-huh.
So,
That's good.
and there are lots of ways to do that. One really important one, step parents, is one-to-one time with your stepkids without the parent present. Every time the parent is present, that stronger, older relationship will dominate, and you will be the outsider. So find some one-to-one things. Start with your most available stepkid. Fun one-to-one things. You know, shy adolescent boy likes to play basketball, can barely look at his stepmother. Stepmother was captain of her basketball team. So the two of them shoot hoops. They
Mhm.
barely talk, but they shoot hoops. You know, a really, as we said in the first session, 12-year-old girls have the hardest time with step families. But you've got a 12-year-old girl who likes to bake. Stepmom and 12-year-old make bake dad's birthday cake. And maybe eventually they bake all the cakes for birthdays. Those kinds of one-to-one activities help a lot. And now we have some new research just in the last couple of years about specific step parent roles. And this is quantitative research, meaning looking at big numbers. And the research this is Todd Jensen's research, that if step parents lead with warmth rather than control, with connection, not correction, there is a wide range of step parent roles that are linked to very better well-being in kids, good well-being in
Oh, that's
kids.
great.
The first is more parent-like, emotionally involved over a whole range of activities, emotionally close, more likely with stepmothers and stepdaughters than with stepfathers. A large percentage, that's one, a large percentage of step parents focus mostly on academics, helping kids with schoolwork. And then the third style is not particularly emotionally close, but warm, present, kind of involved in everyday conversations about, school and friends and dinner. But as long as step parents lead with warmth, not control, lead with connection, not correction, all three of those are connected to very good well-being in kids. And kids with those warm, casual, present step parents have well significantly above the average self-esteem.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's an adult that can have such a huge impact on the kid's life, obviously,
Absolutely.
you know.
And let's talk about the negative impact, because
Mhm.
some earlier research, this is also Todd Jensen's research, has found, and this is longitudinal research, meaning research over time, which then gives you much more cause and effect. When there is a negative step-parent, step-child relationship, we see poorer mental health and poorer physical health down the road in kids. And what's negative? Well, negative is leading with that authoritarian that we were just talking about,
Mhm.
harsh, negative, saying negative things mostly. And the other thing that Todd discovered in this most recent research is very distant step parent, step child relationships are also linked to poor well being.
Mhm.
It is interesting that he found that those very distant step parent, step child relationships are in the framework of a family where the whole family is distant, the couple is distant, the parent-child relationship is distant, the relationship of the child to the parent and the other family is distant, and that distance is not good for anybody
Mhm.
in the family.
Wow. Well, I don't know if that's a good segue into the new family culture, number 4, talking a little bit about that, because I feel like, some of the things you're touching on are about how that all comes together.
Absolutely. It is, so the fourth challenge is we want to make a new family. And we got two different cultures here. So since it's Christmas time, I'll tell my Christmas story.
Mhm.
It's Christmas, and Joe, and what did we call his wife? I don't know. Did I name
I
his
f-
wife?
I can't remember. No.
Okay, I'll name her Diane. It's
Hmm.
Christmas in Joe and Diane's step family. Joe's the parent, Diane's the step parent. He's got two kids, a girl of maybe 10 or 12 and a boy of, let's say, 6 or 7. And Diane is thrilled that it's Christmas, and she starts decorating the Christmas tree with white lights. And Joe's daughter comes in, takes one look at that Christmas tree, and bursts into tears, goes into her room and slams the door. Now, Diane thinks her stepdaughter has ruined Christmas. Joe knows his daughter's used to colored lights,
Hmm.
but he's in that frozen insider position. He feels really anxious, so he gets frozen. Um, uh, and the stepdaughter's in her room crying alone. And this is how it happens if it goes badly. She calls her mother, and the two of them decide that the new stepmother's a witch. So that's how it goes if it goes badly.
Right.
Here's how it goes if it goes well. If it goes well, stepmother's decorating the tree with white lights. Stepdaughter sees it, falls apart, runs to her room. Stepmother and Joe stare at each other for a moment. Joe pulls stepmother into the pantry or someplace private and gives her a hug, because physical contact in front of kids in a step family turns out to intensify losses and loyalty binds and the pace of change. Do snuggle, I always say. Be physical and affection, but do it in private.
Hmm.
Um, he gives her a hug. He says, I'll be back. And he goes to his daughter. And he walks in and sits down. His daughter is crying. She's sobbing. And Joe is either wise enough or has had enough good support in parenting to be able not, what he wants to say is, it's not such a big deal. Calm down. Let's have Christmas. Uh, but instead, he is able to put his arms around his daughter and say, oh, sweetie, you're so upset. This is So many changes. And if he's had some education about step families, he can say so many changes, so many changes. This was one too many, one too many. That's attachment parenting. And what we know about attachment parenting is it's calming to kids. So she screams and cries for a little bit, and then she starts to calm down. And then she blows her nose, and everybody gathers in the kitchen, maybe over cocoa, and they tell each other stories about the Christmas trees they grew up with. Because these stories are not shared in step families. You have to proactively, on purpose, share them. So that's if it goes well. And then, by the way, stepdaughter doesn't have to call her mother and
Right.
complain.
Right.
So here's the deal. There is this expectation that we are this new family. But what I say is we got to change the metaphor. The metaphor in the United States is blended family. And I never correct people because that is the language we use. I put it in my workshop titles and article titles all the time, but I always put quotes on it because it captures the longing more than the reality of a new step family, or sometimes of a step family all the way along. There are still these differences in my family 30 years down the road. So I like to change the metaphor rather than putting strawberries and blueberries together and blending a smoothie. A step family is really a lot more like bringing a group of Japanese together and a group of Italians together and say, live closely and be a family. Now, the Italians, when they slap each other on the back and fight and engage, and to the Japanese, that is rude and intrusive. The Japanese, at least in the beginning, are more contained and more careful, and that is distant. Red is distant by the Italians when it isn't felt as distant at all by the Japanese. So that is the nature of a new family when you've put two cultures together. There's a lot of, I call it learning by goofing. There's no way around it. And oftentimes couples are advised to talk ahead of time, which is really important. Talk as much as you can. But so much of what feels right and as it should be, it no longer is in language until somebody breaks an expectation. It wouldn't have occurred to Joe and his new partner to talk about Christmas tree lights. It just was how it is
Right.
until somebody put lights up that were the wrong light. Now, learning by goofing, what I say to step families is this is going to be normal in your family. It is a hard way to learn
Hmm.
because when there's a break in expectation, there's a spike of arousal. You what? If you know, uh-oh, another one. Okay, what do we got to learn about lights? If you know that, it helps you take a breath and calm down. And when you're calm, to come back and, okay, teach me about Christmas tree lights in your family, and I'll tell you about Christmas tree lights in my family.
Well, I think that, it's so easy for us as human beings to go to this place of um like intent where I think to myself, I'm offended that somebody is doing something like this. They must be acting offensively. And I think that's such a valuable thing that we can provide as therapists as a way of reframing these situations so that people don't feel like it's not because anybody's trying to do something mean or trying to be offensive or something. It's, you know, these two very different, I love the analogy of these two very different cultures who are coming together, and there are going to be, like, when those expectations don't meet the reality of what happens, then there's going to be a lot of feelings that come up, and
Right.
having ways of talking about those feelings, being curious about those feelings, navigating that instead of going to blame and judgment and criticism about, you know,
How could
as
you?
if somebody, yeah, as if somebody meant to be hurtful, right?
Exactly. I think you're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And I also think we do have to uh, normalize or embrace that there is a spike of arousal. This is
Hmm.
a hard way to learn.
Hmm.
This is not a fun way to learn. So there is going to be a spike of what?
Yeah.
And to put your arms around that spike and let it be there, take a breath, wait till it calms down again, and then engage.
Yeah.
There are
And
some, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think this happens in any family, where, the thing, even if I've been with my wife for 15 years, that she does things where I'm like, why would you do it that way? I still think to myself, like, why would you do it
Why
that
would
way?
you do it
You
that
know,
way? First
and
time couples, though, do have some time before kids arrive
right.
to
Well, and I
get
was going to
used to
say
their differences.
it's so much harder in step family situations, I imagine sometimes, especially for the kids who are already trying to adjust to this whole new reality and dealing with all the feelings that are coming up. And then this outsider person is doing these things, and it just, it feels so extreme, and it just feels so sort of justifying their negative mindset toward the person, perhaps, in some of these situations.
Absolutely. And I think you've sort of segged us into the next piece of this challenge, which is there is what I call an easy wrong turn. Um,
Hmm.
Telling step couples to make a whole list of family rules
Uh-huh.
for everybody to abide by. And the dilemma for that is it's too much change too fast for kids and actually for adults. So kids start breaking the quote new rules, and the parent understands why the parent kid is breaking the rule or breaks the rule themselves and doesn't step in and discipline. And so what I say is that making a whole new set of rules is a little bit like trying to solve this Japanese and Italian problem by having everybody eat pasta with chopsticks. It's going to make a lot more misery than unity. You're really going to have to go a step at a time. Start with 2 or 3 changes and focus on the changes that make it safe for everybody. Um, and although, even with those changes, you want to have this same amount of change on each side of a double family. So, knock before entering may be a perfectly reasonable rule in Joe's family. But in stepmom's family, they're used to sort of living in each other's rooms. So knock before entering is going to take a lot more muscle for the kids on that side of the family than for the kids on Joe's side of the family. So to be aware of how much change you're asking of each set. And what that means is you're going to live with some differences, especially if you've got a double set of kids. So I raised my kid on grape nuts, whole wheat cereal. The first
Hmm.
time we went to her stepfather's house, first time we went to Steve's house, she opened the pantry door, floor to ceiling sugar cereal. Her eyes got as big as saucers. So we're sitting at breakfast. I'm not going to make my stepkids eat whole wheat cereal. Are you crazy? And I don't want my kid eating sugar cereal. So my daughter says, why can't I have sugar cereal? And I say, sweetie, we have 2 different families coming together. In their family, they eat sugar cereal. In our family, we eat whole wheat cereal. When you grow up, you can decide which you think is better for your kids. For now, eat your whole wheat cereal. You can have a little bit of sugar cereal for breakfast dessert. And and then I'm going to ask my partner to monitor whether his kids are teasing my kid. Now, I actually monitoring I can do as a step parent. Honey, Becky was teasing Dina about her sugar cereal this morning. Would you say something to her?
Hmm.
Now, as I want to go back, I, as a step parent, can say something to my step kid. However, I have to lead with very skillful ways of talking that make connection, not disconnection. So I am not going to say to my stepdaughter, you will stop that or else. That's authoritarian parenting. It would work if her father said it. Um, I'm going to say to my stepdaughter, sweetie, I'd love it if you'd stop doing that. It's too hard.
Hmm.
I understand, but it's too hard on Dina. I really need you to stop. And I've said it in a soft voice, and I've used I love it if, which I call a sentence stem, which really helps. So back to culture, 2 or 3 changes at a time. And in a double family, that means you may have some differences for a while. And
Hmm.
can the couple hold hands under the table And can you calmly help kids get, yep, they're allowed to drink Coke with their lunch. You have to drink milk. We've got two different families here. When you grow up, you can decide what you think is best. Um, Meanwhile, you're going to drink your milk.
Hmm.
Now, one of the things that's really tough these days is having to navigate, and this sort of eases us into the fifth challenge, which is ex-spouses, having to navigate different cultures between houses.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I have a wonderful young step family colleague. I put together a thing I call the step family schmooze. There are maybe one or two or three clinicians, trained clinicians in the country. And there are a lot of researchers, wonderful, wonderful research. We don't talk to each other. The
Hmm.
researchers and the clinicians go to different conferences. And in fact, the researchers, some of them go to the communications conference, some of them go to the quantitative, there are all these different pods of research. So I thought we got to get together and just schmooze. Um, and one of the women in that, she's a wonderful researcher in Alabama, said her stepdaughter came home saying gays are an abomination. Now, my colleague has a lot of gay and trans friends, and the kid
Yeah,
knows
that's
them.
tough. That's a tough one
Here's
to
what she
navigate.
said. She said, there are a lot of different opinions in the world. Lots of people have a lot of different opinions, and we want you to form your own. And in your uh, other family, that's what they believe. In this family, this is what we believe. We believe all people are humans and good people, just like, Jane and Jill are lesbian friends and Thomas, our trans friend. All of these folks are human, and all of these folks deserve our goodwill. And, one thing our two houses agree on is you've got to treat people the way you want to be treated.
Mhm.
Um, and when you grow up, you can decide what you think about this. Actually, I don't think she said when you grow up. I think she said you will find your own, or you'll decide what you think about this. Not surprising, this is quite a mature little 10-year-old.
Mhm.
Very because she's been treated this way. And I don't know where my colleague got this, but it was
Yeah, that was great.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, those are tough situations. And when you were
Yes.
telling the story about the cereal example, I mean that's hard, right? I'm actually surprised that you didn't say that, the parents have to come to some sort of agreement so that it's the same for all the kids. Um,
But
because
what would that be like?
right,
You
that's
know,
yeah,
my stepkids are going to eat whole wheat cereal. Are you kidding?
right.
My kid has really soft teeth and I want her to be healthy. I don't want her to eat sugar cereal. So, yeah. And that is another easy wrong turn. Let's make an agreement that we're all be the
Mhm.
same. But we're
Right.
not the same any more than Japanese and Italians are the same. And and how to live with the kids in a way
Yeah.
that respects both ways. I didn't say sugar cereal is bad for you. That's why you can't have it.
Yeah.
I said, this is what I prefer. And
That was a great example of the situation between the two different families,
right.
the two new families. And can you say more about that number
Well,
five
let's go
section?
into our fifth challenge, which is there is another parent, dead or alive. With
Mhm.
COVID, we have more previously, more parents who have died before the step family is created. There is somebody outside the family. And our Anglo idea of family is there's a parent and a child and kids. We have a very rigid idea about family. African American kids in step families, by the way, are doing better than their Anglo counterparts, and we believe that is because it's called other mothering. There is a value. Anybody who's there helps parent, neighbors, grandparents. Um,
Mhm.
if a kid's in trouble, everybody pitches in. If a
Yeah.
kid needs something, everybody pitches in. We think that's a combination of perhaps a more communal African culture that many slaves came from, but also it was a resilient response to African American families, slaves being torn apart. Their families were torn apart, and
Right.
whoever was there had to parent. So those kids are doing better in step family. And by the way, stepfathers, Black stepfathers are more likely to back up the mother rather than step into discipline. Gay fathers as well. And that works much better for kids. So back to
Oh.
ex-spouses, there's another family or another parent. And here's what we know. We know that that the most robust predictor of children's well-being is not single parent family, first time family, step family. It is the level of conflict and the quality of parenting. So kids in high conflict with families where the parents are never divorced are doing much more poorly than children in low conflict families where the parents are divorced.
Uh-huh.
And that's true for adults as well. Young adult daughters and adult daughters, particularly, it turns out, are impacted by adult tension and conflict. So, really important, the most important thing that we do as therapists is anytime you hear conflict between ex-spouses, what I say to my supervisees is we need to pay attention at the same level that our docs pay attention to blood pressure. They play, and now I'm almost 78, but I think for everybody now, they take your blood pressure every time. And if it's high, they intervene immediately with education and medication, immediately. And conflict is that important. Keep an eye out for it. If you hear that there was conflict either between the step couple or between the two houses, ask were the kids there. And what I will often hear is, yeah, they were there, but it didn't bother them. Well, if you wired those kids up, somebody did a research like this. You wired those kids up, they look fine on the outside. On the inside, their stress levels are going way, way, way up.
Yeah.
So really important to intervene, really important to say, I'm sure that really that difference with your ex really mattered to you. And I know you love your kids. I know you love your kids. I know you wouldn't want to do something that would upset your kids. Here's what we know. Want to hear? Here's what we know about the impact of conflict on kids. Want to hear it? Actually, even moderate tension, this is really interesting research. Even moderate tension, and these are non-clinical, non-divorced families, impacts kids' academic function. It impacts their attention, and it compromises their immune levels. And that's because parental tension impacts sleep. These are actually people who study sleep. And when sleep is interrupted, all of those other things happen. So if you've got a kid who isn't sleeping, whether it's a first time family or a step family, do check for a level of parental tension and conflict. That isn't always the source, but it is sometimes, and it's worth checking.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that because, I think when we're looking at how conflict has a negative impact on children, it's just so important to give people the information. And I think citing the research is a good way to do that, to let them know and to try to appeal to the best part of them, to change the way that they're doing some of those things, because it is going to have an impact on those children.
Absolutely.
I think
And
we're afraid as therapists of that confrontation sometimes, like telling someone that they're doing something wrong. And I definitely think there's an art in how we
there
do
is
that.
an art, and I think it always starts by what I call joining. It starts by, what do you understand, therapist, about what the parent is trying to say? She's a horrible person. She's bad for my kids. This is a mom. I bet that, that must be hard to watch. It is. What's harder for a mom or a dad than your kids are now living with somebody you did not choose, who you cannot supervise, and you don't like her. So it makes sense to me you're upset about her. That makes total sense. And I know you love your kids. I know you would want the best for your kids. We've got some research about what what is the best, strongest predictor of kids not doing well in divorce? Do you want to hear? And then I'm going to make her ask. Here
Yeah.
it is. This is going to be tough to hear. Here, and I'm going to say it low and slow, as Sue Johnson would say. And what I sometimes say to these folks who can't stop doing this is, this might be the most important thing you do for your kids and the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
0 to 10, how hard is this going to be? 10 hard, 0 easy. If it's going to be really hard, we're going to need to talk some more about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be the hardest thing you ever do and the best, most important you do for your kids.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one more thing about when a parent has died. We're going to see more of this because of COVID. The expectation often and the wish for the adults is that step parent can move in and replace the missing parent. Turns out parent-child attachment is forever. Kids mostly do not want a replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you try to replace, they will get more hostile. And it's also true, by the way, that young kids handle grief with anger. So that's particularly hard for step parents. So what kids need is support for grieving, help remembering their parent. And each kid may want this different. Where do you want photos? We're not going to, where would you like photos of your mom? I want one on the refrigerator. Well, stepmom, that might be hard for you. It is the best thing for your stepkid. And selfishly, it's going to be better for you.
Mm-hmm.
If this kid feels like they can't hold on to their parent, they are not going to make room for you.
Right. This is the second or third time I've been thinking in the back of my mind, like we have to prioritize the needs of the children in the
That's
situation, and we
correct.
have to expect the adults to be adults and be a little bit more mature than the children in
And
the
it's
situation.
hard sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And one of the ways I appeal to adults is to say, actually, a mucked up kid is really hard to live with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually in your best self-interest to do what's
Right. That's
best for
right.
the
That
kids.
definitely, definitely. Yeah.
So sometime, Shane, we have to talk about later life step families,
Yeah.
because the rate of divorce in the United States is at a 40-year low, except over 50, where it
Uh-huh.
has doubled. We call
Yeah.
it gray divorce, and those people are recoupling, and they face the same challenges, intensified by many decades of.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to say anything more in the last couple minutes here, or should
Sure.
we can set another time to
Let me
talk
see if I
again?
can say it
But
short.
yeah.
Um, Gray recouplers have the fantasy the dog's dead, the kids are out of the house, it's just us, it's our time. When I teach about this, I put up a slide of the couple. And then the next slide is a genogram with all of the generations and all of the lines of attachment going every which way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality. Decades of relationships. And so all of those 5 challenges often are right there. And in addition, I'm finding that and many therapists are seeing this, there's what I call a fraught father-daughter, later life recoupled dad, whose daughter is really unhappy about the new relationship, doesn't want to meet the new partner. When this goes badly, the new partner says, you can't see your daughter unless she's there, I'm there. What's in those families, either the dad was pretty distant, marriage was bad, dad was being a provider for the family, wasn't present, daughter had very little, not enough connection with him. And those daughters say, listen, he was never there when I was a kid. Was captain of my basketball team. He never came to a basketball game because he always had to work. And now he wants me to be part of his family. He's out of his mind. Either that or the marriage was dead. And so dad and daughter were very close.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's in love and she's lost him. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't stand how he looks. Oh, it's so disgusting.
Right. Right. She had
We
been like
also,
the surrogate partner.
right, well, yeah.
I mean,
They've been very close.
yeah.
And the treatment, by the way, is very similar. We didn't talk a lot about this, but it's going to be parallel. family therapy and step families, you cannot put the whole family in a room because of the competition for attachment.
Hmm.
The couple's needs and the step parent, the parent-child needs and the step parent, step-child needs are in competition in a step family. So you're going to want to think in systems. You're going to think systemically, meaning hold the challenge for every individual in your heart, even if your clients cannot. You're going to work in subsystems, and you're often, if you're a family therapist, going to work in parallel with the couple and the parent-child relationship. You're
Hmm.
not going to do intimate work with the step parent step child relationship until the step parent is ready to hear the kid's pain. You're just going to encourage this, and that may be soon or never. You're
Yeah.
going to encourage the step parent to do what we talked about earlier, get to know your step kid.
Hmm.
And the same is true with these later life couples, uh, turning the couple towards each other, helping the new partner reach as opposed to clobber, helping dad be able to say, I will hold you. I will care for your feeling rejected by my daughter. I will not reject my daughter.
Hmm.
And then working with father, daughter to help daughter really let dad know just how pained she is and helping him really hear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, and it brings in so many other dynamics, with the children being adults at that point and grandkids being involved eventually and all those other
That's
things
true.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you so much, Patricia. I'm so glad we got through the five different challenges. And any other final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm just glad to have put this information in people's hands. And let's mention my book, Surviving and
Yeah.
Thriving in Step Family Relationships. Uh, I wrote for both people in step families and clinicians. It has a lot of clinical work in it. It has all of the research in it in end notes so that it doesn't clutter up the book, but it's all there if you want it. And then the other book is the Step Family Handbook, From Dating to Getting Serious to Becoming a Blended Family, with quotes around blended family, with Karen Bonnell. And that one was written for the public, much breezier style, no clinical work in it, no research, but based on the research. And my clients like to read both. They're quite different. They're both on audio
Mhm.
tape if you
Oh,
don't
great.
like to read. And my website, stepfamilyrelationships.com, but I have a very unusual name. If you Google Patricia Papernow plus website, my website will come up. And I promise you there won't be another. Uh, has a bunch of videos,
Oh,
some
great.
really short, 1 hour
Uh-huh.
long one that people like, and a whole bunch of podcasts and radio interviews.
Oh, great. Yeah, and I can put links to all those, the books and your website in the show
Great.
notes so that people can easily find them. And I know I've learned a ton, and I know a lot of other people will, and they'll probably want to go and watch the videos and read the books and everything. So
Unfortunately, there's not much out there. There's almost no other clinical. There's one other clinical book that I know of.
yeah, I was so
And there's a
surprised
lot,
when you said that.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff for step moms, especially, but a lot of it is full of what I call blogger boo-boos. It's full, it's one person's advice, and a lot of it is just plain wrong. Um, and some of it's destructive. So unfortunately, there aren't many resources that are what we call evidence-based. And these books turn out to be really helpful for people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you again. And I really hope we can catch up again at some point in the future.
I'd be glad to. We can talk about later life families because we
Yeah,
have long
sounds
time
good.
step families too,
Oh, great. Yeah,
dealing
sounds
with
good.
elder care and inheritance. So we got lots more that we can talk about.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching the show. I'm Shane Birkel, and this is the Couples Therapist Couch podcast, a podcast that's all about the practice of couples therapy. If you enjoyed the show, please hit subscribe. Please hit the like button, and you can continue to get all of the most up to date information in the world of couples therapy. If you are a therapist who's interested in learning more about the practice of therapy, or if you're someone who just wants to learn more about how to have a good relationship, definitely hit subscribe so you can get all of the latest episodes. Thank you so much. Also, if you're interested in the Couples Therapist Inner Circle, you can click on the link in the show notes. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Shane Birkel. This is the Couples Therapist Couch.